glad you had come. It's a nice show for the night before Thanksgiving, and I wish you all have a good one, a memorable one, and thing to remember. There will be a stamp show here in Lancaster for the locals. That'll be on the Saturday and Sunday before Christmas. That's the 20th and 21st up at the Farm and Home Center. And then our December dinner will be December 10th for the locals again. We have a few I need to know, or let Dan know, Dan Martin, or if he can't remember that, send it to me. But we need to have the thing lined up by next Tuesday to give us a week for the people at Landis Homes to get things done right. So keep that in mind. If there's any change and you can't make it, let us know too, because that is important. With that, are there any announcements for the good of the society? Any open confessions for the good of your soul? Well, then I think we'll start. I'm looking forward to it. As I notice, we're going to start alphabetically. So I'm all off the cuff tonight. But having Rick Barrett again with us, and I think everybody we know all each other. I think on the screen, so I don't have to go through all the formal. But we're just very fortunate to have Rick give another talk tonight. He's done several, and we appreciate it. And you're just given a big award, I think, for the best article in the American Philatelist. That's pretty darn good. Many of us don't even get to publish in there, and you got the best of the year, so that's good. But he's very active in his program, he does I get in your stamp club. You do the programs, right? The meeting planning and everything like that, which is important, and keeping everybody honest. And you realize program manager of a stamp club is a very lonely job, especially if somebody calls and says, I can't make it, But I'm just so glad to see you. So without any further ado, let's let Rick take over, and he'll be talking about just some interesting vignettes of the postal system. And if we could mute ourselves, and then Rick, anything you need. I will also mention too, for Rick, Rob, and Scott. I think Scott, we have yours, but if you want to have your PowerPoints online in our website, please send them to Charlie, and he'll take care of that. So, okay, you're on. Share your screen. We'll be ready to go. Do you want questions before or after?
I think after would be what I'm most used to, if
Okay,
that's okay.
we'll do that then.
But all right. Thank you. Thank you for your kind words, Paul.
Sure.
And yes, for others that may not know, I'm the Paul Peterson of the Houston Philatelic Society. I do the programming there and enjoy Paul's guidance when I need it. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. It's good to see so many familiar faces and make new friends. Tonight, let me share the screen first. Okay, we're going to go here, and can you see that okay?
Not yet. Yes.
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay, great. All right. Let me, whoops, I gotta go to the screen myself to see what I'm sharing. Okay.
And I lost the image when I
Lost-
turned it around.
Okay, well, tonight's presentation is called A Canadian Christmas. It's actually the story of
I need
several
up the
stamps.
volume too.
My volume. Let's see. Go to my audio and hope that everything is. There we go. We'll try that.
Okay.
Let's hope that's a little better. Okay, today's presentation is called A Canadian Christmas. It's actually the story of several stamps similar in appearance. And we're going to start here with the story of how the imperial penny postage was established in Canada in 1898. That lowered the postage rate from 3 cents to 2 cents so that new updated stamps were needed. And it meant that a letter could be sent anywhere in the British Empire for the equivalent of a British penny. Now, let's go to our next slide. This picture actually shows the first batch of imperial penny post mail being put on a horse-drawn carriage in London in December 1898. Turning to the Great White North, the new stamp that we just saw there would feature a world map with Great Britain's territories highlighted in red with Canada pictured in the center. And who was behind the design? Canada's iconic Postmaster General Sir William Mullock suggested issuing the stamp on November 9th in honor of the prince, the heir to the throne, the young Prince of Wales. But Queen Victoria made her displeasure known immediately when meeting with Sir William, replying, "What prince?" She and her eldest son had a notoriously rocky relationship since Prince Albert's death in 1861. The Queen is said to have blamed her son and the stress caused by the Playboy Prince for his father's death. Now, Postmaster General Mullock was able to think on the fly and turned the meeting around after suggesting that release date by replying, "Why, madam, the Prince of Peace." He thus proposed that the new stamp honor Christmas and the birth of Jesus, which satisfied Queen Victoria. She approved the new stamp for issue on December 7, 1898, even though the 2-cent rate service actually began on December 25th, Christmas Day. It was the first stamp of Canada to feature multiple colors and was the most elaborate stamp that had ever been produced in that country. And despite there not being any part of the image on the stamp that would actually celebrate the hobby, meaning no Santa, no tree, no reindeer, it is frequently classified as the very first Christmas stamp issued anywhere. And as you can see, it does prominently show Xmas 1898 in the design. The stamps were printed by the American Banknote Company in Ottawa. First day covers dated December 7th are extremely rare. There are 10 known examples, and they catalog for $2,500. And here's an image of one of them. There was actually a story about a cover dated December 2nd, 1898, yet that item was proven to be a fake. And it's documented that what are called map stamps, they were first available at some Canadian post offices on December 7th. The next three pictures show covers mailed in Canada with December 1898 postmarks. One from December 12th, 1898, from Thorold, Ontario. That's near St. Catharines, close to Niagara Falls. Here's another one from December 14, 1898, postmarked Montreal. Beautiful flag cancel there. And December 21st, 1898, mailed from Brockville, Ontario, which is about 60 miles south of Ontario's capital city of Ottawa. First day covers from the official first day of issue of December 25th, 1898, are a bit more common, and they catalog for $900. This one actually sold for $1,300 on hip stamps, almost 50% over catalog value. Now, the map stamp was assigned Scott number 85 with lavender and gray oceans, and Scott number 86 shows the oceans in various shades of blue. They're printed using 5 different plates, which provided collectors with endless interesting areas to study. Much has been written about the different color varieties of the oceans, with many stating that the stamp was never intended to have more than one ocean color. However, there is good evidence to suggest that the stamp was intended to be printed in equal quantities with green and blue oceans, but the green oceans never materialized. Catalogs have long divided the issue into 2 distinct stamps, with oceans shown in shades from lavender to gray. Those are broadly known as number 85. Stamps with various blue shades of oceans fall into the number 86 camp. Complicating matters even more is that this issue also suffers from oxidation that causes the oceans to appear in a light brown or golden shade. Those so-called muddy water examples are actual color changelings and are not considered printing varieties. I just learned that term changelings, which is a dictionary in the dictionary defined as philately, a postage stamp that by accident or intention has been chemically changed in color. These were very attractive and popular stamps which people wanted to use and enjoy. There was a perception among some that they were only available for use on Christmas Day. So the Philatelic Advocate put the word out that the following summer the stamps were available and they were going to continue to be sold for some time. This is from July 1899. Collectors today can find a very nice overview of the stamp in the Unitrade specialized catalog of Canadian stamps. You can see that they've done a nice job of providing details for many versions of both Scott's 85 and 86, along with a range of values. And that information all grew out of the tremendous efforts of the philatelic community 120 years beforehand. Ewan's Weekly Stamp News was a prevailing publication in England. It actually was the only philatelic weekly published in all of Europe. They did a fine job of documenting numerous aspects of the map stamp and educating collectors, which attracted many to pursue these items. I mean, check out the details they provided. This was the accumulation of data acquired after about 15 months since the stamp's release. This is just in-depth, wonderful, wonderful information for those that were interested in not just documenting, but also collecting these stamps. In fact, 3 issues later, in the April 7th, 1900 issue of the journal, a collector's letter was published regarding clarification about which ocean color stamp came out first. And it's a nice reflection that people were enjoying searching for the wide selection of map stamp offerings. Then, 89 years later, a fellow named Whitney Bradley produced an extensive reference guide called The Canadian Map Stamp of 1898, a plating study. I found this at the American Philatelic Research Library in Bellefonte, and it's just a wonderful research tool. It has proven to be a thrilling source for those interested in building a quality collection of map stamps. Here's a couple pages inside the publication which illustrate the extensive details available for collectors of this stamp. And imagine the time and passion involved in compiling this amazing personal collection of map stamps. This is just one page of 10 inside that guide with considerable notes. So Mr. Bradley did a terrific job there. 9 more pages of that person's fantastic niche collection. The details are just amazing. All those little red dot variations are incredible to have chronicled. Check out these. Every one of these different red areas here provides different notes and different plating and different areas to collect that stamp. Collectors have also enjoyed searching out imperf versions of the stamp. This is a nice vertical pair. And next is a superb imperf block of 4, which came from the lower left of an imperf sheet. The going price for this at auction was around $1,500, and I thought you'd enjoy some nice postal history. A neat attraction is to find covers which have examples of both Scott's 85 and 86 on them with the different color hues. This is a really fine example from December 1899. Here is a registered letter with both Scott's 85 and 86. Covers with both examples continued to show up for a while, too. Here's a nice one from July 1902. And let's fast forward to 1998 and Canada Post, their post office. They honored Sir William Mullock and the map stamp 100 years after the initial release. This is Scott's 1722. Now, besides all this, there's another very cool part to the story of the Canadian map stamp to share as well. Some of you may recall me previously talking about the Ellicott Square building in Buffalo, New York, my hometown. Well, when it opened in 1896, it was the largest office building in the entire world. The stamp dealer that I wrote about in my book, Buffalo Cinderellas, was named Rayner Hubble, and he had a retail outlet in the lobby of the enormous building called the lobby was called the Grand Court. Mr. Hubble sold stamps there, a lot of stamp albums, postal history, and souvenirs of all kinds for the Pan American Exposition, a large World's Fair held in Buffalo over 6 months in 1901. And before the expo, there was another entrepreneur who had an office in that very same building, and his name was I.J. Schultz. Here's his business card with a telephone number. Every office in the Ellicott Square building had telephones in it. You could call from one office to another. That was a very modern thing at the time. And the souvenir stamp in the upper left is what he copyrighted with his name on it. You can see it right there, copyright 1899, I.J. Schultz. This is one of my favorite collectibles from that era that I have. And if you look closely, you'll see that this Cinderella stamp had a direct association with the Canadian map stamp. It shows a similar flattened image of the globe with different text along the top and bottom. Bison heads have replaced the 2-cent designations in the lower corners, and Schultz's name, as we just saw, is along the bottom. Though the design was supposedly copyrighted, a notice in the April 6, 1899 Buffalo Evening Times mentioned the Schultz business and his expo stamp. It notes that the stamps are to be pasted on letters by those who desire to advertise the exposition. The expo sure got a nice mention just under the paper's masthead there. Right there, the Pan American Exposition at Buffalo will fitly celebrate the close of the 19th century. So that was a fun thing to find. And the last edition of the Evening Times, a couple days later, had an even longer mention of Schultz and his stamp. Well, as far as the stamp itself, there are two versions of it. One being on thick or standard paper with distinct perforations. That version is shown at the top here. And then there's also a version on very thin paper that has tattered perforations. Value-wise, the standard stamp is really easy to find most any time. It sells for anywhere from $3 to maybe $8, depending on condition. And you can find nicely centered ones. That top one's pretty darn good. And it's nice that it's not too terribly difficult to locate, unlike many other Cinderellas that had, they certainly had less quality control when produced. And the examples on thin paper aren't too challenging to find. They turn up now and then. When I have extras, I offer them for $15 a piece, and they usually go pretty quickly. Next, I'd like to show you one of my favorite Expo map stamp collectibles. It is a cover mailed from Kingston, Ontario to Newark, New Jersey. And instead of a Canadian map stamp, it has a Pan American Expo stamp on it. It's really a fine cover that simply slipped through the Canadian post and has a postmark of April 27, 1899. And I imagine a few may have attempted to send mail in this way, and I wonder what percentage of them got returned. And better yet, can you imagine one arriving with a postage due stamp on it? That would be really neat. And this next one's a little bit different, as the Pan Am Expo map stamp tied to this cover is more of a commemorative add-on, as it already has embossed postage on it. Moving on here, Mr. Hubble was likely the largest distributor of Pan American Expo map stamps, the Cinderellas, and we know what a tremendously prolific advertiser Mr. Hubble was. Here's an advertisement from the November 26, 1899 Buffalo Morning Express, and the Expo map stamp is shown at the right of the ad's collage. The 5 different souvenir stickers, as they were called then, sold for 1/10 of a cent, or 100 of them for a dime. And in the 1890s, there were 12 newspapers actively publishing in the greater Buffalo area, and Rayner Hubble advertised in many of them. He really did a terrific job promoting his business and Philately as well. And if his marketing budget was exhausted, he still felt compelled to place classified ads as extensively as he could. Here's a couple classified from the Buffalo Morning Express from 1900, which are they're about the size of your little finger. I took this picture when I was given the opportunity to go through an historic scrapbook that in the offices of the Ellicott Square building that were found in their basement there. And the scrapbooks were put together in 1905, and it's pretty cool that Mr. Hubble's classified ads were part of it. As you can see, the bottom ad has a little image of the Pan American Expo map stamp on it. That map stamp is also shown on the right again in Hubble's 16-page 1900 philatelic price list. I have this in both blue and white, and another edition that's kind of blue on orange that's quite hard to find. Hubble's retail envelopes with 100 souvenir stamps inside looked like this, and both have the Pan Am Expo map stamp pictured on them. So does this amazing flag postcard with a bison in the upper left. Hubble sold these commemorative pieces for 3 cents a piece. This is likely the rarest one in existence. This Hubble postcard traveled 8,000 miles from Buffalo to British Guiana. Word of the Pan American Expo map stamp spread through stamp journals of the day. It was mentioned in a 1900 issue of the Philatelic Spectator, where it was noted, quote, "It is very attractive and probably a good advertiser. It's not a postage stamp, therefore is not required to complete a collection, as some thought." And I believe there's around, by my calculations, somewhere between 25 and maybe 40,000 of these. That's not been documented, but I could tell from some other research that I did that it's probably in that range of how many were produced. Here's a half a dozen covers with the Expo map stamp fixed to them in various places. This one's from May of 1899. I love this next one here with Buffalo, the Electric City, beneath the cachet on the left. This rarity has Cinderellas on the front and back with map stamps on both sides. Pretty exciting piece there. Next up is a fantastic cover with a fine green Expo cachet, standard postage, 4 Cinderellas, and a proprietary and documentary stamp on it. Pretty cool seeing those battleship stamps on this one as well. Why they got there, I have no idea. This cover was mailed from one stamp dealer in Illinois to another in St. Louis. It was sent on July 18, 1901, during the summer of the Pan American Exposition. And finally, this is a nice one, postmarked about a month later with a Tide Expo map stamp. It was mailed from New York City to Pittsburgh. And as we begin to wrap up, this cover not only has an attractive cachet on it, but also a fabulous pair of map stamps, which is imperf between them. Unreal that one survived. Most of the individual stamps that turn up are mint, many without gum, and it's fun to uncover a used single here and there. This one, I mean, somebody had to obviously soak this off a cover. This one has a nice flag cancel on it, making it particularly attractive. And another item in my collection that I'm particularly grateful for is this rare sheet of 50 Expo map stamps. I've only seen one other of these sheets before, and if you look closely, the sheet has a straight edge on 3 of the sides and perforations on the left. And we've wondered if maybe the sheets came from the printer bound in some kind of book and that they would be torn out when sold or needed. That might say why both the sheets that I've seen have the perforations on the left. And finally, what else do we know about the man behind the iconic Pan American Expo map stamp, Mr. I.J. Schultz? Well, after extensive research and zillions of Google searches, I've pretty much struck out. The only item pertaining to Mr. Schultz, besides that business card, that I've found a mention in a publication is been in the Society of Automotive Engineers, where his name was listed as being in Detroit. And hopefully someday we will have more information. Yet to round out my talk, and I believe this is from 1908, so he would have probably moved from the Western New York or Buffalo area to Detroit, Michigan. And to round out my talk, I'm happy to say that the old rascal, my favorite huckster, William B. Hale, must have enjoyed the Expo map stamp as he affixed one to a mailing card that he sent out from Syracuse, New York, actually to someone in Syracuse, 5 weeks after the Expo. There's no evidence, by the way, that Hale ever actually made it to the Expo, since he was in Europe from July 1900. William returned to the States in October 1901, literally a couple weeks before the Expo closed. He apparently did support it, though, as this postcard shows. So that's it. Thank you so much for allowing me to be with you tonight and present and share with you a topic that I've had so much fun with. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try and help.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I apologize for getting your topic wrong. I think I'm jumping the gun on one of your later ones on the post office. That's what happens when I do things by memory. What I said, of all things I've lost, I think I've missed my mind the most. But
Thank,
wonderful. You know,
thank,
you brought up a couple things, with all the little red dots in different places. I was looking at all that, and I'm just thinking, I think they have medication for people who do that. I really do. And then with Queen Victoria and the naming of the stamp, there was a similar one with George V. I think it was a battleship or a no, it was the ocean liner, and they were there. The builders were thinking of the Queen Victoria, but they said to him, yeah, they said we're thinking of naming it after the Queen. They're thinking Victoria, and he's thinking his wife Mary. I said, I'll talk to her, but I think she will like it. And that's how it became the Queen Mary.
wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
You have to dance around. Questions, folks? Anybody questions? Do you know why on the Pan American version, both North and South America were all red? Was that just to make it very distinguishable?
I sense you
That's all I
pegged it.
can think of. That,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Make it distinctive and stand out and show off their two color abilities when they made that stamp, which
yeah.
was a pretty new thing.
Because I remember with the 1913 U.S. International, the Cinderellas that were made, they looked so much like stamps that we have to stop using them. And even though when you compare them, they didn't look at all alike. But yeah,
Sure.
so that's probably why. What do they call it? Risk management. Very good. Other
Thank,
comments or
Hey, Rick,
yeah.
you said you did about 1,000 Google searches trying to find information. Uh, I was having the same problem with researching a small town here in Ohio. And just for the heck of it last night, I tried an AI search on it. I got a whole page of information. There might,
Nice.
might be someplace you could look.
That's great. The last time I did an AI search on William B. Hale a year ago when AI hadn't been as prominent or developed, and it said the results that came back said that William B. Hale was the most famous stamp collector ever, and he's the one that found the upside down airplane stamp and all this erroneous information. But it's definitely become much better. And so I need to do that for Mr. Schultz and see what comes up. Thanks, Dave.
you just remember the first airplane? It wasn't that good.
That's right.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Rick. We really appreciate it. And we're Looking forward to your talks next year, which are
Thank
already scheduled. So I really, just really pleased. Uh,
thank
Now we'll move on to Scott. I think I will get yours right, and you're going to be talking about using the newspapers and other areas for research in genealogy and using it in philatelic history. But Scott is the editor of our award-winning newsletter. He's presented several times, a wide variety of interests, but a lot of it around some of the World War II issues and um, what do you call those little tokens and things like that? What do they call,
And
Scott?
ration tokens.
Yeah, yeah, that stuff and Civil War and baseball, African Americans on stamps, France, some Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was in a recent email. He said he's thinking maybe cutting back, and probably at your young age, it might not be a bad idea.
Yeah.
If you look at some of us as bad examples. But I'm really pleased that Scott is here, and we're looking forward to his talk. So, without further ado, Scott, I will pass it on to you, and then we will mute, folks.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Rick.
Do you want questions during or after?
Oh, you can give them to me during.
Okay.
I'm presenting on an idea tonight. Hopefully, it'll be useful to some of you. There'll be plenty of time to get some good at the snack bar if it's not. But let me share my screen here. I'm going to be presenting on using the news, I call it, some ideas for you to do some philatelic research using online newspapers. And Rick's presentation contained a really good real life example of that with the information that he found about his stamp dealer in the Buffalo newspaper. So this is, let's see here, how do I advance the slides? There we go. So there was a time not so long ago when you had to go to a library to do newspaper research. You had to take your dimes or your quarters if you wanted to make photocopies. And you had to know, well, not so much know where to look, but you had to kind of be lucky too. These are just a bunch of copies I made maybe 15 years ago when I was at the State Library, Pennsylvania. I was doing some research on my favorite Civil War regiment, the 46th Pennsylvania. And I had a list of newspaper items that were compiled by a gentleman who did work at the Army War College, and he was doing research for a book on Pennsylvania regimental flags. So as he was scrolling, through the endless rolls of newspaper, he was jotting down names of regiments and whatnot. And as far as I know, you could probably still get those at the Army War College in Carlisle. But you really don't need them anymore because today you can search online. This for the benefit, in case this makes it to the internet, this presentation is not sponsored or endorsed by Ancestry or newspapers by any in any way. But I wanted to give you guys a few ideas in order to, if you're interested in checking out some old newspapers to do some philatelic research or other kind of research, you can do it. So this graphic here shows that when I took the screenshot last month, there was 1,148,036,559 newspaper pages on newspapers.com, and they have newspapers from all over the world. So it's easy to do the research.
Do you need a subscription for that?
Yes. Yeah, I can tell you about that now. You can start with a 7-day subscription for free. After that, you can pay on a monthly basis. You can pay on a 6-month basis, which I think my subscription is for, or you might even be able to pay a year. And if you pay a little bit in advance, you can save a little bit of money on it as well. I will, a little bit later on in the presentation, though, I will touch on possible no-cost ways that you can look at newspapers, though, because there are still some on the internet that you either won't have to pay for or you won't have to pay extra for. But this is not it's not a tutorial, but I want to show you some ways that it's been useful to me. This is a clipping here of an old Pennsylvania Dutch newspaper column that appeared in the Allentown Morning Call for many years. One of the reasons why I'm hoping to be successful in cutting back a little bit on my collecting, not just stamps, but other things, is because I want to learn a couple languages in my old age, and getting conversational in Pennsylvania Dutch is one of the things that I've always wanted to do. So if I'm ever going to do that, now's the time to do it. But I can go into newspapers and find old, if you look under where it says April, that's not English, that's Pennsylvania Dutch. So you can look into old newspapers to study languages if you want to, which I intend to do at some point. If you just want to check out a particular day, here's what newspapers.com's browsing feature looks like. You can see there, you can choose a country, choose a state, choose a city, choose a newspaper, choose a year, choose a month, choose a date. It's that easy. If you search that way, it'll bring up the entire edition that you're looking at or that you want to find. This is Lebanon Daily News from 1985, and I can just look through this whole edition of the newspaper if I wanted to. What might be more useful for research is the search feature, and here's an example of what newspapers.com search feature looks like. Up at the top, it has some search fields. I chose for my keyword the Lancaster Philatelic Society. I didn't choose a date range, but you can choose any date range that you want. And to the very right, you can also choose an optional location. So I chose Lancaster County, and within a matter of seconds, I received 342 matches. And all I would have to do to look through those matches is just scroll down the page. And when I click on the link where it says, for example, where it says Intelligentsia Journal, page 8, it'll take me right to the page where that newspaper article or that entry is. I used newspapers.com to create a history of the Lebpeck show. I'm a member of the Lebanon Stamp Collectors Club. Our friend Dick Holberg is the president, has been for many years. And we held a show from 1973 to 2001, and I always kind of wondered what went on. Is the first thing I ever did when I got a subscription to newspapers.com was to look to see if I could find information in our local newspaper about the show, and I found lots of it. So if you ever want to check out the show cover, not the show covers catalog, but the Lebpecks in the news, it's on our affiliate page on the PSLC website, and you can see how I use the clippings to kind of cobble together a little history of, it's mostly advertising, but there are a few write-ups as well about our shows. So here are a few other clippings. The yellow box that's on the clipping indicates the keyword that I used in my search. When I found clippings, I just basically took a screenshot on my computer and pasted it into a Word document. There is a functionality on newspapers.com, though, where you can kind of crop your clipping and kind of keep it in your account. And that's kind of neat, because when you're going into a newspaper, if somebody has ever taken a clipping of something on a page, or even of what you're looking for, you can kind of see a blue box around it, like that clipping I showed earlier of the Pennsylvania Dutch newspaper column. Somebody had already been there and taken a clipping of it. So, and this is just one more example. Found some material for that using Lebanon Stamp Collectors Club as this keywords and Lebpecks, and I found lots of stuff that way. I'm currently working on a presentation for August that is tentatively called A Journey to the Nye Post Office. As you might guess, this is part family history project, part postal history project. And I am using Microsoft Word to collect the clippings that I find by taking them as screenshots and pasting them into the document. And here's an example of some of the clippings that I have found. Searching on the postmaster's name, who was my great great grandfather, I found information on Elias Nye. Searching on the Cold Springs Hotel, which was really the only thing up there of interest at that time of history, and now actually. There's nothing up there now, but I was able to find things about the Nye post office. So if you want to see how that turns out, you just need to stay tuned. Check it out in August. There's another interesting feature of many old newspapers that you might not know. They published social columns where people would, I think they might have written in, or later on when people had telephones, they might have phoned into the newspaper office, and they'd, tell them some news about a birthday, or a child coming home to visit them, a grown child coming home to visit them. This is an example of one from South Lebanon in Iona and Lebanon County. But this might be something that you can look for to find information on one of your ancestors, or if you have a cover addressed to a certain person in a certain place, you might be able to find out something that they did a long, long time ago. Nimrod Donor was related to one of my high school friends. I met her mom, and I looked up his name for her, and I found a whole bunch of stuff in there about him. But I've also found plenty of stuff in there about my own relatives in these social columns. And I think they were popular probably up maybe into the 50s, because I know that one of my dad's early birthday parties was published in the Lebanon Daily News in one of those. So, kind of wrapping things up, the possibilities that you can use newspaper clippings for are endless. This is just an example of a baseball blog that I follow on Substack. If you don't know about Substack, check it out. You can find people writing on pretty much any subject that you would like to read about. The author of this blog in particular, he grew up playing the APBA baseball simulation game. It was a tabletop game using dice and cards that you can play your own Major League Baseball games, and I included that because I'm sure many guys and women might remember the headquarters that used to be on the road to Millersville here there in Lancaster. Regarding if you don't want to get a subscription to newspapers.com, you might still be able to use newspapers to do research. If you have a subscription to the New York Times or the Chicago Tribune, or especially, I know that a lot of the bigger newspapers have their own archives online, and you don't have to pay anything to use them if you have a subscription. Before I had newspapers.com, I had a New York Times subscription. I used the New York Times a lot. But obviously, you're kind of limited. Even though the New York Times was the country's paper record for many years, you're obviously limited on what you can find in there. This is a screenshot of the Reading Eagle. I've been using the Reading Eagle for several years now to just go back and read about old baseball, Phillies games from the mid to late 80s. You can still get the Reading Eagle for free on Google News. And I'm not sure exactly what all's available on there, but I'm sure you can find other local newspapers on there as well. So that's the end of my presentation. Try it out for yourself. Happy hunting. And I figured I'd close for sure with a postal history thing. And this is just an item in one of the Lebanon newspapers about when a stage route ended. A stage route ended because a couple of post offices in the southeastern part of Lebanon County were closed. So, with the post offices being closed, there wasn't as much demand for the stage anymore. But you can find out, little things like that just by searching your old newspapers. Thank you. Anybody have any questions? If you do have any
Yeah, I have a
questions,
question.
yes.
I have a question. What is a stage route?
Oh, like just like a carriage, a horse and carriage.
Or the stage refers basically to a carriage? Is that the idea?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I guess the stage routes probably would have ended anyway. A few years after that, because you were starting to see trucks and stuff on the road. But if anybody has any questions, I'm sure you all have my and you don't want to ask them now. Yeah, I'm sure you all have my email address, so feel free to email me. Rob, did you have a comment or a question?
Yes, Scott, thanks. That was a nice talk. I remember buying a game at that APB store on Millersville Pike some years back. But so I know through the Franklin and Marshall College Library, there's good access to various newspaper archives. Um, how about public libraries? What kind of access do they offer? Have you tried that?
Varies. I used to do research at Lebanon Valley College, but for some reason they're missing a big gap of the Lebanon newspapers. The State Library of Pennsylvania in Harrisburg has a lot, but it kind of takes a long time. Like I remember going there and it took a while for them to retrieve all the films, and then you had to scroll through them all and stuff. Your local historical society might have some good microfilm holdings, so you can certainly still do that type of research at a library, though, if you prefer.
Well, I actually mean digital access. Like through the F&M library, they have access to numerous periodical and newspaper databases.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
that's not open, I don't think, to everyone, but I'm wondering if public libraries might also have digital databases that you could access online. I haven't tried those.
I think most libraries, they kind of have like a institutional subscription to it. I used to use um, something called Accessible Archives back in college, because I used to like going into the old Pennsylvania Gazette from like the 1700s. They and where I went to university, they had a subscription to it, so I was able to access it for free. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you went into F&M and asked them, hey, do you have such and such or so and so, they might have it. I know that I've seen online actually different library websites, um, saying that they have different types of digital holdings. But yeah, I think for the most part, all you would need is a library card to access that type of thing. So thanks for
Remember
the
when we
question.
moved to Lancaster, uh, I just made small donations to the F&M library, and they were given privileges, I guess, what you're saying, Scott, to get the library card.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it can be cost prohibited, like that Accessible Archives, for example. I looked into getting a subscription and it wasn't worth it for me to get a personal one, but all I would have really had to go somewhere that had access to it.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think in time, a lot of this will go down in price, with AI, especially.
News Newspapers.com is not bad. I think it's like $7.95 a month.
That's good.
And right now, I'm getting emails that they're giving gift subscription. If you buy a gift subscription, it's like 40% off. So
Hmm.
maybe get somebody to buy it for you. Yes,
I like
Rick.
that.
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback because every year I renew my newspaper.com and ancestry.com on Black Friday, which is coming up in 2 days. And you don't need a ancestry.com subscription to get newspapers.com, but if you get Ancestry, you get the standard version of newspapers.com, and then they give you the opportunity to upgrade to a different higher level. I think it's called Publisher Extra, and I pay $74.95 every 6 months for the publisher extra. But anyway, again, like you just said, that a new email address can take advantage of those Black Friday offers. If you do it this Friday for the first time, that's great. But then you want to make sure you cancel it before next year, and then
Yeah.
go get another Gmail address for free and do it again, and you'll get it for free. So I mean,
Nice.
you'll get the discount, but great presentation. Thanks for the information.
Thank you, Rick. And yeah, thank you for that. I know that I think I get the publisher extra too. I don't have Ancestry, but I mean, since we're on the subject, if you want to research a Civil War ancestor or something like that, Ancestry also has some um, special services available for that as well. So there's like tons of stuff you can do now to research that you don't even have to leave your house for, which is kind of cool. Thank you, Rick. Anyone else?
I'll just say, Scott, a couple of comments. When you find a
Yes.
good research tool, how important it is. I remember I finished graduate school in 1981, just as the computer searches were coming out. You had the big machine with the green and white chunk, 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 and you had, yeah. But even then, it was amazing. And then, Rob, you'd remember the social science and the physical science citation index. Learning about that thing then just opened everything, still hard copy and everything, but, compared to hours and hours of going through library material, how much it saved you. So, yes, thank you. I'm assuming people can get in touch with you when they have questions.
Yep. Yep. Like I said, if you want to send me an email, I'll happy to respond to it if you have any questions after.
Scott's contact info is with the board members page on the website for PCLC, so you can catch it there, or any of us too. But that's very good. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We
Yep.
do.
You can send your newsletter submissions to that email address too if you have any. We're
Okay.
always looking for new submitters.
Very good. I like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good stuff, Scott.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Well, we'll move on, Rob. And Rob joined us, I think, the month before we closed for COVID. But he lives a few blocks from me, and I guess just a couple of weeks ago, when that around the corner from you, a church was converted to an art coffee shop, and so we started going. We've done it once. We bring a different album, we share it, and it's a nice entertainment. I think that might be a nice place for club members to meet. Parking isn't too bad, and it's right by Buchanan Park. So think about that, and maybe we can do some more of that. But introduce Rob, and he's a retired professor of geophysics. And since I had a little bit of geology in school, I know what it is. I don't know if I could talk about it, but it's complicated. But he is retired from there, but still involved with the university, and lifelong collector with many interests. And he showed me some of his material that he was preparing for the exhibits, in a couple of weeks ago. Very, very impressive. And he's going to talk and continue some more of those this evening. So without any further ado, join me in welcoming Rob back, a member of our club for many years, speaker on many topics, especially those that kind of shake the earth in the earthquake format. So Rob, you're on, and we will mute.
Okay, Paul, thanks for putting this together. And let's see here. Let's try this. Okay, that shows up now, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, we've had two really good talks so far, and we'll see what I can do here. This is kind of a little bit of a side collection for me that I've just started recently, and I'm not sure it will go much further, but it seemed like a good thing to maybe fit into our miniature format for tonight. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Thornton Wilder and Newport, Rhode Island. So on this postcard of Rhode Island with a bicentenary stamp, Newport is here. It's actually on Aquidneck Island in Narragansett Bay. And If you would want to contact me, questions might be a little better at the end. Here's my email address, rs_sternberg@yahoo.com. And I'll try to answer questions afterwards, or feel free to email me at any time. So this is a small collection that I've put together in the last 2 months. It was sort of stimulated by a trip I made to Newport, a book I read by Thornton Wilder. I use eBay for my collecting, so it's not too hard to find common things and acquire them in a hurry. So I guess you'd call this a small thematic collection, and I have a number of different philatelic items that I'll show you in the course of these dozen or so slides. Uh, Two books actually, but one that's more relevant than the other. And I've also included some photos that we took that I took on our trip. So this was a trip to Newport, Rhode Island. My wife and I went there to visit my older son and his wife. She was in a workshop there for a month, and so we spent a week there just about 2 months ago. And I always, if I'm going on a trip, I try to read some kind of things that are related to the place we're visiting. So the first book I read, we took the train up. That was several hours, and the first book that I started on the train was a mystery story by Mary Higgins Clark, who is a best-selling writer, had many books, bestsellers still in print, called Moonlight Becomes You. And this, I read it as an ebook, but on this cover of the printed book, you can see one of the nice houses on the coast in Newport, which looks kind of similar to this photo I took while we were there. So it was to me a typical kind of mystery story where they yank you around with different possibilities, and at the end, somebody emerges kind of surprisingly as the culpable person. So, as with many books of this sort, I didn't particularly like it, but at least it was relevant reading to the place that we went to, and not hard to read, I guess. So that was important for a vacation trip. Uh, but the second book I brought along was better. I got this actually out of the library initially. So it was a book called Theophilus North by Thornton Wilder. It was his last book, written in 1973, although it was semi-autobiographical and reflected on some months that he had spent doing odd jobs in Newport in 1929. So most of you have probably heard of Thornton Wilder. He's one of the most highly decorated creative writers with Pulitzer Prizes. He won two in drama and one in fiction. I think Eugene O'Neill and Robert Frost each won four Pulitzers in drama and poetry, respectively. But Wilder crossed over two different categories. I bought this book after I'd read the one from the library. I started doing my eBay searching and kind of thought, oh, there's some things I could collect here. So I bought a signed copy of the book by Thornton Wilder. And he died in 1975. So this was close to the end of his life. I'm not sure who George was, but he sends a world of regards. And his last teaching position was in New Haven, and it's signed from there in 1975. So I just have some kind of different, a few items on Thornton Wilder. There was a stamp issued in 1997, and this was part of a literary arts series. And so I have the souvenir page issued by the USPS on that with the information that's probably too small to read. But one example of a first day cover, picture of Thornton and a couple of his publications behind. You know, our town, I think, is the most performed play in high schools in America. I remember my high school did it, although I wasn't in it. And there's in the stamp, the background kind of represents Grover's Corners, which was the fictional town from New England portrayed in our town. And the stamp was issued on the 100th anniversary of Thornton Wilder's birth. And I have a plate block as well of that stamp. Now, in the book Theophilus North, Theophilus or Thornton Wilder kind of presents Newport, Rhode Island as 9 cities. And each of these cities in this context means a certain kind of historical aspect of the city. And he talks about the cities being one of the earliest settlers, the 18th century town, a prosperous seaport, home of the Army and Navy, of social and intellectual culture. They're ultra rich. So if any of you have seen the miniseries, The Gilded Age, you know that part of that took place with the resort homes of the ultra rich in Newport. Hired help, people that lived in the first floor, the basement of these houses, the miscellany of other people, I guess the paparazzi of the day, and then just the regular folks, the permanent residents. So these are the 9 aspects of the city that kind of he talks about in the different stories in the book. The red ones are the ones that I will show you some philatelic item and or photograph of in this little talk here. And I'll do this sort of one by one. So we'll start with the vestiges of the earliest settlers, and I have a postcard from the old stone mill. And, I've talked to the club before about my collections on the International Geophysical Year and earthquakes. Earthquakes, most of the items I have are postcards. I try to get ones that are posted, preferably with a little story about the earthquake. This doesn't really talk, well, the postcard is about the mill. I think the message, which I've transcribed here, doesn't talk in particularly about the mill, but it's close enough to the sort of thing that I collect. And my photograph of the same mill. It was kind of mysterious for years what this really was, and there were various suggestions. Some thought it was a Norse structure. I think there was a suggestion that Chinese had come to the United States and built this. But the more recent research seems to suggest that this was actually built by Benedict Arnold, who before he became a trader was the governor of Rhode Island and owned some property there. And this would have been on the area of his property. And it's suggested that it was probably a windmill, which the top of which is not there anymore. So I picked this postcard to represent the earliest settlers. This would have gone back into if it was Benedict Arnold, would have been maybe the late 1600s. So the next one of Wilder's cities was the 18th century town. And to represent that in this little collection, I chose the Toro Synagogue. The Toro Synagogue is the oldest standing synagogue in the United States. It was built in 1759. It was the second synagogue structure from the Jewish community that had probably come up from the West Indies in the 1600s. I think the oldest synagogue, was in New York City, but is no longer standing. And so I have the Toro Synagogue stamp on this cover, and there's, for some reason, not only the image of the synagogue and corresponds to my photo over here, but a picture of George Washington. So George Washington visited the Toro Synagogue, and he actually wrote them a letter, which is kind of mentioned here, sort of praising the congregation and endorsing religious pluralism. which coming from Rhode Island, I guess, was important to their history. We had a very interesting lecture by one of the congregants about the history of the synagogue. Newport was actually occupied by the British early in the Revolutionary War before they left. So that would be part of this 18th century town as well as its kind of role in the Revolutionary War. So prosperous seaport. I guess I chose a postcard here that I bought on Bowen's Wharf. And again, here's the message on the card, which I've transcribed over here. It mentions that Newport is the sailing capital of the world. And we did take, my sons and daughter-in-law and I did a boat ride around the bay that started from the wharf here. We didn't check out the National Sailing Hall of Fame, although that exists in Newport as well. But this postcard, comes from a family that seemed to enjoy their vacation. Probably a little bit stressful because Grandmom and Grandpop said they would need a restful vacation after spending this one with their kids. So we're moving kind of forward in time generally as we go here. And the fourth of the 9 cities of Thornton Wilder is the presence of the Army and the Navy in Newport. In fact, the reason we went was because my daughter-in-law, Emily, who's a commander in the Navy, had a training workshop at this facility before she transitioned to her new position in Honolulu, where they've been for a few weeks. So this is a souvenir folder, or parts of a souvenir folder. Here's the cover. And there are 9 views on one side of the souvenir folder of Newport in general. And on the flip side, there are 9 views of the Navy presence in Newport. So the Navy has had a long time presence in Newport. They moved some facilities there during the Civil War. USS Constitution was there for a while, but the Naval Training Station and the Naval War College were started there in 1883, 1884, and the site still remains a training site, which is why Emily was there for a month. So one of the postcards showed the Naval War College here. I actually didn't visit it, although we could see it from our driving over the bridge and taking our cruise on the ocean. And here is another postcard of the parade grounds showing the Navy personnel there. And then here is a photo I took of Fort Adams, which was the Army facility, which goes back to the end of the 1700s. It was an Army fort until 1953, and it's still used now for some Navy housing, but it's also a state park. And this is the site of the renowned Newport jazz and folk festivals that take place every summer. It's where Bob Dylan went electric, among the many amazing performers that they've had there. So for social and intellectual culture, I chose Thornton Wilder. So the book that I showed you before with his autograph was a little more expensive than most items that I buy from my collections. And this signed cover was also a little more expensive than the thing I typically buy. But here is a kind of sketch of more or less what he did look like. So this is a photo from the same, I think, year as the cover is from 1930. He signs it here, University of Chicago. He was teaching there for a number of years. I guess a friend of his for a long time was Robert Maynard Hutchins, who was a famous president of the University of Chicago for quite a long time. So this one I was glad came with a certificate of authenticity. And it turns out that the addressee, who is H.M. Brehm, was an artist, an autograph collector, and he was the secretary of the Appleton, I guess that's Wisconsin Philatelic Society. And I guess this was something he did, was to create drawings of notable people and to get their autographs. So I thought this was kind of a pretty cool item. Wilder was known to be fairly gregarious. He could be introverted, but was an easy person to socialize with. Here he looks kind of like in a bad mood, but I don't know. So again, the ultra rich, some of you might be familiar with that aspect of Newport life from the uh, Gilded Age series. We actually started watching that a few months ago because my younger son recommended we see it, and we didn't really know at the time we'd be making this trip, but it fit in quite nicely. So the cover that I have shows four stamps on American architecture, and the places shown are the Biltmore House in Asheville, North Carolina. This was designed by Richard Morris Hunt, a famous American architect. And then there's the New York University Library, the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco, and the National Farmers Bank in Minnesota. The cachet is actually the Marble House. It's none of these stamps, but the Marble House was designed by Richard Morris Hunt for one of the other Biltmores. And that's one of the mansions that you can tour if you go to Newport by the Historic Trust. And I think all three of these mansions were used in parts for the Gilded Age series. Here are two photos that I took of the dining room, and you can kind of see over here there's some signage which kind of relates it to this is a scene from the Gilded Age TV series, and it explains where this was used in the TV series. And of course, if you've seen the TV series, there's quite a bit on the hired help, and the kitchens for the mansions were kind of very nice to look at. And this is the kitchen in the Marble House, and kind of shows a lot of the cookware there. And I think this was a can opener, if I remember correctly. So we toured those three mansions. That was kind of a nice part of our week. I don't have anything on numbers 7 or 8 philatelically. So the last thing I have is for the permanent residents. And to represent that, I used this cover. This cover was for the opening of the Mount Hope Bridge, which is over here connecting the northern part of Aquidneck Island to Portsmouth, I think it is up here. There used to be a ferry before that, and the bridge was built in 1929. This is an interesting cover because it's an airmail envelope, and according to the stamp here, the cover was transported via airplane over the bridge. So it's sort of a mix up of transportation styles. But the cover dates, the event cover dates to that opening of that bridge, and the postage corresponds to airmail postage of the day. So those are some of the different cities within a city of Newport historically. I guess that's the last one I have to offer. So this was fun to put together on a topic I'm not necessarily going to pursue. But again, Scott had an interesting presentation of the resource of the newspapers. I do almost all my purchasing on eBay, and if you're looking for things that are reasonably common, you can find and buy them as quickly as you can. I probably spent more time organizing the poster than I did finding the items. So thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and if there are any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Thank you very much, Rick. I mean, Rob, I really appreciate that. I think what I liked about it is that you took the kind of the outline of the book for your presentation and filled in with philatelic items and a very thorough history. So thank you for that. Questions, people? Anybody?
Rick, I think, has his hand up.
Oh,
Okay.
I got an easy one. I enjoyed it, Rob, and I love how you took a simple interest and expounded on it. That's just so inspiring to see you follow your passion. But my question is, did you choose to buy the signed copy of Theophilus North because of the book's connection to Newport, or was there another reason? There's so many other options you may have had.
Yeah. Well, no, I enjoyed reading the book, and I guess I sort of imagined I'm live, right? I imagined doing something like this, and when I found that book, I said, yeah, this would be kind of a nice piece of it. I'm not a particular fan of Thornton Wilder otherwise, but it was just something I thought it would be fun to incorporate in my collection and to put in a presentation like this.
Well
And
done.
I have to say, I guess, I'm imagining that whenever I start to put disposing of some of the things I own, it might maintain its value probably better than, the things I collect more seriously. So
Very good. Other questions, folks? We have anything? Well, thank you very much, Rob. We appreciate that. Um, question I had when I saw your the one-page exhibits that you made, uh, do you do that with like PowerPoint or with uh, Word, or do you have any other,
yeah. So I actually use Google Slides.
Google
And
Slides?
Google Slides, it's free, and it's in the cloud, but you can download what you do. Um, and it's sort of PowerPoint equivalent, not 100%. So the only thing I have sometimes, like if I would, so if I would be wanting to show this as a PowerPoint, you can download it as a PowerPoint, but some things might change the formatting a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be a little careful of that if it's important for you to have it turn it into a PowerPoint presentation, but it's fairly equivalent. It's easy to use. It's free. And
Mm-hmm.
what I do now, so if the society posts this on his web on its web page, I will use links to that to share with people. But until then, or if that wouldn't be done, I can share the link to this presentation. It's in my Google Drive, and I can share that with people who might want to look at it.
Very good. Thank you.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Go ahead.
This is in full disclosure, the son, one of the sons of Rob. Dad, I liked how you had a vignette for each of the 9 cities, but you left 2 out. So I'm curious, did you not find the right relics for those 2, or you did it for the interest of brevity? I was kind of curious what you would have represented the hired help for, especially since, of course, in addition to the ultra rich, they play an important role in the city.
Yeah, so I thought of showing my family in my trip photos, but I didn't do that. But now they're kind of watching me here, so I have to be careful. But I didn't think it would be, I didn't look too hard, but I imagined it would not be easy to find something about the hired help that was sort of philatelic and Newport relevant. I mean, I could have found something, I guess, but I decided to just leave that unfilled. But maybe if I want to complete this presentation, I could look for those and see what I can do.
Can I ask, as a non-philatelist, I would have guessed that generally the rich and famous and the celebrated leaders of our society are those that get acknowledged with stamps. Is that changing over time? Is there kind of more attention to the hired help equivalent more recently, and how stamps acknowledge different parts of society?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. Some people might be able to give a better answer than me, but in terms of particular people being represented on stamps, that probably leans distinctly towards the rich and famous. But there are also stamps that honor workers or groups in our society, and so that would be, I guess, one way to maybe fill in those blanks, although they might not be Newport specific, but certainly in terms of cooking or house aids or whatever. I can't think of, I don't know at the top of my head what that might be, but I'm sure there are stamps that might be related to those groups of people.
And Rob, I can add, I was just listening to a podcast about the Red Ball Express during World War II, which was a truck convoy that supplied Patton's army to really get ahead of the the enemy. And it was the drivers were, I think they said about 75% African American. And a stamp was brought out for them, I think, during the 1990s with the Celebrate the Century series, and which would show the common guys, but who made it possible and who really helped to win the war. They said someone would drive 3 days straight until they were hallucinating, then the next guy would take over. But to get there, and it defied all German engineering estimates of what the Allies could do as far as the logistics of supplying the ammunition and the fuel to be there. And they said that's what won the war, the trucks and the drivers. That's it from the German side. So, yeah, we're starting to see a lot of that on our stamps, besides rich and famous. I never did think I would see George Washington on a stamp, but from the newsletter from Dayton, there's going to be an American Revolutionary sheet with a lot of people, all different backgrounds, and they had George Washington in there as well. So, yep.
It seems like a
Other
lot of
questions for Rob?
I was just going to make a comment. It seems like a lot of the subjects they're picking nowadays are ones that might sell.
That's
But,
true.
within that, there still are some pretty nice personality stamps, which I would, consider historical.
Yeah.
A lot of them are people that have recently died, I think, because probably people who more recently passed might sell a little better. But there
Hmm.
is still a citizens stamp committee where you can send your suggestions in. I sent a suggestion in one time, and I would actually like to do it again. Because it'd be kind of neat to see if they ever pick your idea, to see it actually become a stamp.
Yeah, that's an interesting committee. Um, the notes never are made public, and the members are sworn to secrecy. How they decide the different topics that appear in U.S. stamps. Very interesting. Yeah, what it has, like artists and designers, historians, uh, philatelic collectors, dealers, a little bit of everybody. Other things? Well, Rob, I want to thank you very much. Rob and Rick and Scott saved my day, pulled me out of the fire. But I think, when you see, I think we had up to 22 different people, that says a lot about our club and everything. And with that, I want to wish you all a wonderful Thanksgiving. Some of us had losses, but it's a time to remember, to reflect. And we think about our club members and the friendships we've formed over the years, and how grateful we are for that as well. Other topics or questions before we go? Remember then, I need to hear from people by Tuesday if you want to add on to our December dinner. And don't forget the stamp show on the 20th and 21st at the Farm and Home Center.
I do know that those stamp shows are going to be happening less frequently. I think they're going to be cut down to 4 next year.
Are they?
Yeah. So we're going to have less opportunities. So maybe it'd be a good time to check it out right before Christmas.
Yeah, yeah. And he's back to having a free lunch. And I read a book that said you don't get no such thing as a free lunch.
Yeah.
But Kevin's getting up there in age too, and his health has been, that's a big deal for him.
Yeah, the way he explained it, I guess the Farm and Home Center's under new management, so
Oh,
he
yeah.
was only able to get like 4 dates.
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
I'm sure he'll make the most of them, especially
Yep.
if we show up.
Yeah, that we have to continue to do that. Well, thank you, Scott.
Yep.
Are there any interesting tidbits for us? Well, again, then, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. And we will see you next month or next year.